Hello and welcome to this short video about the sine rule. Now we use the sine rule when we have a triangle without any right angles. If we did have right angles we'd just use SOHCAHTOA. Now the sine rule tells me that A over sine A is equal to B over sine B, and because they're fractions we can flip them upside down, it doesn't make any difference. So we also know that sine A over A is equal to sine B over B. So if I don't have a right angled triangle, what I'm looking for is two sides and two angles. Now the question that's on the screen at the moment is a sine rule question. I've been given two sides and two angles are playing. I don't know what one of those angles is yet, but I know two angles, or know one angle, I've got to find the other, and I know two side lengths. Now what we can do first is label the sides. Corners, where angles are, always have a capital. Side lengths have a lowercase letter, and the same letter goes opposite its corresponding capital. Then what I'm going to do is substitute in. Now because I'm trying to find an angle, I'm going to use this version. Always have your unknown on top. So I know that sine A over A is equal to sine B over B. So sine of 130 divided by 15 is equal to sin of question mark, or sin of theta, divided by 10. And then what we're going to do is rearrange. So I'm going to multiply by 10, so I get 10 times sin 130 over 15 equals sin theta. And then what I need to do is find the inverse sine, so I get theta on its own. So I'm going to find the inverse sine of 10 times sin 130 over 15. Remember, to find inverse sine, sin minus 1, you press shift and sin on your calculator, and that comes out at 30.7 degrees to three significant figures. Okay, so if I'm looking at this top question here, I know it's a sine rule question, so I've got two sides, and overall I'm dealing with two angles. Now let's just label up the corners and the side lengths, and if you remember, capitals for corners and lowercase for side lengths. I'm using sine A over A equals sine B over B, so I keep my unknown on top. It will work with the unknown on the bottom, it just makes it slightly harder later on. So I'm substituting in the values, so I've got sine theta over 7 is equal to sine 55 over 6. So multiply both sides by 7 to get sine theta as the subject of the equation. And then when I do this next part, when I find the inverse sine, I'm using exact values. I've not found a decimal approximation, and that gives me 72.9 degrees. Now this next question looks a bit more complicated. These sides line up nicely, we know the opposites, but I don't know that opposite angle there. We can still use the sine rule, because I'm still playing with two sides and two angles. What I'm actually going to do though is use the sine rule to find this one here. I know that's not officially part of the question, but we can then use the fact that angles add up to 180 and subtract. So let's call that A, and that little a, that B, and that little b. So sine A over A equals sine B over B. So sine alpha over 9, it doesn't matter what you've called that, equals sine 50 over 7. Rearrange to get sine alpha on its own. So sine alpha is 9 times sine 50 over 7. And when we find the inverse sine, alpha is 80 degrees, or 80.0 degrees, so three significant figures. So I know that this here is 80 degrees. So if that's 80, A is 80 and B is 50, and theta, which of course was the actual question that we were being asked to find, is also going to be 50 degrees, because angles in a triangle add up to 180. We can also use the sine rule to find a missing side length. I'm going to do the start in exactly the same way, so label up my angles and my sides. The only difference now is going to be I'm going to have a over sine a, so I'm keeping the unknown on top. Substitute in what I know. So that equals 6 over sin 50. I still want to get a question mark on its own, so I'm going to make that sin 80 times 6 over sin 50. And of course this time I don't need any inverse sin, it's just going to give me the answer straight away, and that's 7.71 centimetres to 3 significant figures. And again we use the same trick here. I've already used up 120 degrees, so that missing angle there is 60. Label up my angles and my sides. I'm going to keep the unknown on top, so I'm going to have a over sin a is equal to b over sin b. So that'll tell me question mark over sin 60 is equal to 7 over sin 80. Rearrange to get question mark on its own, so times both sides by sin 60. Which is 6.16 centimetres. I hope that helps. Thanks very much.